And hey, we are now recording. Okay, so I know most people do know me here today, but I am Praxilitarna. I never go by that because no one ever remembers it, so I'm mostly just Prax. I have been in the SCA since 1991. I've been playing pretty significantly seriously about the last 10, 12 years. I am a crazy lace researcher, mundanely. I'm a research nerd. I like to cook. I've done, we were looking at, I think I've done 11 feasts, 11 different feasts. There for a while, I was doing at least one a year. So I really like to cook. I don't do a lot of camp cooking, but I really enjoy feast cooking. I also have a serious sweet tooth. I am a sucker for marzipan. I love doing subtleties. I like playing with marmalades and quinces and suckets and all sorts of fun late period things. And as a result, rosewater is one of those major ingredients that turns up a lot, like really a lot. It's pretty much in everything. And while it isn't that difficult to find, especially since Amazon will ship us anything, I lucked out and I have several gigantic rose bushes outside of my house that are quite thrilled to have me ignore them entirely. And they are outstanding culinary roses as a result. They are big, bushy, rambling roses with teeny tiny rose petals on them that have the most amazing smell and a great flavor. And that is what you're looking for when you pick your roses. I mean, obviously not everybody has the ability to make those choices. Sometimes you just got what you got. But when you pick a rose to make rosewater, what you want to do is pick a rose that smells good. A lot of the more modern ones these days were not bred to be good smells. They were bred to be beautiful, to be big and bloom throughout a season and have amazing colors, but they were not necessarily bred to have great smell. So when picking, please, if you can, if you have a choice, pick something with a good smell, because that smell is going to make your flavor. The next thing to point out, and I have this actually listed in the huge handout. I think it's 4 slides that we'll be looking at in a few minutes. But you want roses that have not been sprayed. Pesticides are not something that you want to distill and come into something that you're going to be drinking and handling. So organic roses are great, ones you grow yourself. I make my husband absolutely crazy because I refuse to let him do anything to my dandelions or my roses or anything else that might grow up in the middle of my lawn. And it drives him nuts because I'm cooking and eating it. But that's my plan. And so we don't put any sort of pesticides on anything, and that's what you're looking for. You can also purchase dried rose petals that will work. And if you're going to purchase dried rose petals, purchase a culinary rose petal, purchase an organic one. Mountain Rose Herbs carries rose petals that you can use that work quite nicely. I've used them at least once in the past. Okay, so what I'm going to do is we're going to run through equipment. I'm going to get a batch started. Again, this is not going to take the full 2 hours, but we'll get it going because I'm at a high elevation. I'm in Utah, up over 6,000 feet, and water does not like to boil here. It takes a bit. Also, I happen to like to use heavy bottom pans, which take a little bit as well. You don't need to use a heavy bottom pan. That's just my preference and what I own, because that's what I prefer to cook with. So, and we will start with that. First of all, and I am sitting down because I couldn't get it so that you could see both me standing and my oven stovetop in the same shot because I'm tall. So I don't normally cook sitting down. That's what's happening today. All right, so this is just a pot. Mine happens to be cast iron with ceramic inside, again, because that is my preference for a pot. But you could use, you could use a regular pot. You could use a saucepan if you're doing a small amount. You just need a pot, some sort of trivet. A lot of the online recipes you'll see tell you to use a brick and wrap it in tin foil. Honestly, all you want is something that is going to be that's going to be heat resistant. I happen to have cookie molds everywhere, so I'm using a couple of cookie molds because they let me stack them and make a good space. And I'm putting them in the middle of the pot. And you want a bowl you can heat. It's not going to get super hot because what we're going to do is we're going to boil and then we're going to simmer. So it's not going to get crazy hot, but you do want to make sure that your bowl is heat proof. And it has to fit inside your pot with space for some roses. So I have now created this amazing piece of equipment. Next up, the important thing you need with your pot. It has to have a lid. A plain, sorry. A glass lid is fine. This just happens to be the lid that goes to my pot. It works better. It works better if you have a little bit of a dish or something, because we're gonna, rather than doing it this way, we're gonna flip it upside down and put some ice on it. Now I have taken off the knob on my pan, on my lid, because if you can, that's an awesome thing to be able to do, because then things just kind of drip down rather than getting caught on the lip. So I'm going to leave the little screw in here so that the hole's covered, but I have taken off I've unscrewed the knob. You don't have to do that. And honestly, you don't have to flip it upside down. I've done it otherwise. Just the problem with not flipping it upside down in a lot of cases is that then you're dealing with trying to balance ice on a dome. So that is our amazing equipment. Next up, I'm going to start some roses. I'm going to wash them. Well, first of all, I'm going to wash my hands, and then I'm going to wash them. Mostly rinse them. I'm not really going to wash them, but I will definitely rinse them. Luckily, these were just in a thunderstorm, so. But go ahead and wash your hands. Oh, hi, welcome. Okay. All right. Alrighty, so next thing we're going to do is put some rose petals in, and I'll talk about the roses in just a minute. But like I said, I want to get some going. so we have some happening. I'm just gonna loosely put just rose petals in my colander. I didn't get all these separated, but all right. All right. We don't need to get them really dry because I'm headless. All right. We don't really need to get them dry because we're gonna get them wet. So just put them around your base in your pot. And I'm gonna put my bowl right there, and I'm gonna take enough water to cover them. You can use distilled water. A lot of people do. I don't because I'm lazy. You will get some of the impurities of whatever your water has. That doesn't bother me. I have nice tap water, and so I don't use distilled. I just use straight from the tap. And I'm gonna put just enough water to cover. Gonna put my pot lid on upside down, and then just turn my burner on. You can put it on, if you want to put it on low or high or whatever, you could put it however you would like to. What you're trying to do, you're just trying to boil it. So we'll let that boil. Okay, let's see with the sharing screeny thing. And where is that? It was up. Oh, it really was, I swear. Okay. Everyone able to see that? So let's make Rosewater, simple steam distillation in your kitchen. So this picture in the background is my rose bush yesterday when I realized that it had bloomed before I knew it had, and I needed to make Rosewater. So that is half of my rose bush in the back. It goes around the front, and then I have another large one on this side. And those look like, those are just lots and lots and lots of roses, but they are little roses. So here's some from a couple of years ago where I was just showing them pulled into a bowl, which is exactly what I was doing earlier. We've run through our equipment. You need a pot, a lid, a heat-safe bowl, ice, a bottle for storage of your finished rose water, and I would recommend labels. Print some, hand write some, whatever, so that you know when you made it. And it's important information to have. Also, since a lot of people do things like this for largesse, also important to have. Your ingredients, you need rose petals, not chemically treated, and water. I have listed ice as equipment because it is not, because it's acting as equipment in this. Okay, so here's some general questions that I thought people might want to ask. If you have other questions, please feel free to unmute yourself and ask them. I am more than happy to answer anything, but these are the ones that I was thinking, hey, these are probably what people are going to want to know. One, there is a totally cool, amazingly nifty recipe for the Goodman in the Goodman of Paris, and this is not it. What's going on? Yep, this is not that. I haven't tried those. They are a different form of doing things. There's one that's listed as how to make rose water without a lead alembic. And it involves you taking a basin, a barber's basin, and stretching a kerchief across it, putting your rose petals on top, and then it says to bring down another vessel that has coals and embers on top of it. I haven't tried that. I don't know how that's going to work. This is the way that I have done it. I've done it this way since before I was in the SCA. So this is what made sense to me. So we're doing it that way. And it sounds like, crazily enough, my water is boiling. Looks like I might need a little more water. But it is definitely boiling. So let's turn that down. So I'm going to turn that down, and then I'm going to put ice on top. Okay, I'm leaving that on low. I have ice on top. I am planning to let that go for at least 20 minutes. That is the plan. Okay, so back to, I've been doing this since before the SCA. This is basic method I know. It is similar to, if I, the sort of chemical, not chemical, but the method that you would use if you were distilling, but one that you can easily do at home. Next question, does it matter what roses I use? As I said before, you want a non-sprayed rose. Beyond that, if you have a choice, you want something that you like the smell of. And what I tend to do, because these are what I have in my garden, I have things like, this large one here. Oops, let me flip. We'll stop the share for a minute so that you can actually see me. Hi. So this is a large rose that is one of my, hybrids out in my regular garden. I have, larger Larger reds, I don't tend to use these. They have a nice smell, but they have nowhere near the jam-packed power I'm getting out of these little babies. Like I said, this is my big rambling rose, and I use it for culinary. And if you can get an heirloom rose or an older rose, I have an Alba, which is a white rose, an old white rose that I don't use for this because I wanted to keep tips because it has the best rose hips. So that's what that one does. But different, if you're gonna pick one, you can actually choose roses that are great for culinary uses. Roses are related to apples. Well, apples are related to roses. And so they are edible, but you want something that's gonna taste nice. So if you can, pick something for its smell. I also like the fact that, as you saw before, I have thousands of blooms, so I can make as much as this as I want, as opposed to, I don't know, I get 10 or 15 of these on a bush, but these I got for days. But again, you can buy dried rose petals as long as they're organic. And again, I would recommend Mountain Rose Herbs because I buy most things I can from them. I like their company. Small plug. I have no affiliation with them whatsoever, but I like what they sell. As long as they're not, as long as they haven't had pesticide on them, you're pretty good to go. You will just get a different, like anything else, you know, if you use a regular grocery store honey when you're brewing mead, you won't have the depth of flavor you would if you went to your local beekeeper. So that's where that is. Okay, so we looked at roses. Okay. And we will go back to the screen share. Okay, so we talked about what roses to use. Does it matter if you have fresh petals? Do you have to cool it? Do I have to use ice? No, you don't. And also, if this goes terribly, horribly wrong and you don't get any sort of precipitant, you will still have something. You will still have the water that you boiled your rose petals in. It will still have some flavor. It will be the color of whatever your roses were. It will still have some fragrance. It won't be as deep. It won't be as shelf stable, but you will still have something. You will not have made a horrible mess that you can do nothing with. You will at least have some options. So you can just boil rose petals or simmer rose petals and get the water off of that. And that works really well for things like hydrosols, for like a face toner, if you want to do something like that. But if you're trying to go with a good measurement, you really do want to try to, in a recipe, you'd probably do want to try to use the ice. At least with this method. Like I said, there's other methods, other places. How long does this last? I have read various and sundry different things about that. Everything from it'll keep 2 months in the refrigerator, it'll keep 3 months on the shelf, it'll keep 6 months on the shelf. So you're going to want to watch it. I've had it for 3 months with no problems, shelf stable, in a sealed bottle. It still smelled good. It still tasted good. There was no mold or anything, so I felt comfortable using it. But it's not going to last forever and ever and ever. This is not, it doesn't have any preservatives. So it is not something that's going to be forever. It can get moldy. It can get, the smell will fade, especially if you don't keep it sealed well. So there are some ways in which you can make it last longer. You can refrigerate it, and that will up how long you have to use it. You can freeze it. I like to be silly. I use my little heart-shaped pan and freeze little chunks of Rosewater in ice cubes this way. You can use a regular ice cube tray. I don't happen to have one, and I think these are fun. So, but yeah, you can freeze it. Putting it in small chunks just makes it so it's more available to if you need 2 teaspoons for this or a cup for that or whatever, as opposed to freezing it in a big old hunk. Another option is to add some alcohol. You can add a little bit of vodka, not more than like a teaspoon, but you could add that, and it wouldn't, make it last forever and ever, but it would give you another month or so. So that's also an option. Let's see here. What else we got? What do I do with this once I have made this thing? Great, now what? Well, you can do a quick search of cookery books and go nuts, because there's just lots and lots and lots of options in medieval cookbooks for recipes that use rosewater. Let me look. I had one pulled up. Yeah, it's not. All right, of course it's not going to pull up right now. But you can go to like medieval cookery or whatever your favorite medieval cookery site is. Do a search for rosewater, and you will get pages. Just it'll pull up all the things that have rosewater in it. Everything from desserts and drinks to a lot of meat dishes have them in it. A lot of things with almond milk and custards, and it was a very popular flavoring. Pretty much anything we would modernly put vanilla in is going to have rosewater instead. It's in everything. It's in everything. So just pick something, try it out, see if you like it, decide you hate it, give it a shot. One of my favorite stories is I was doing a feast. It was for our annual Toys for Tots toy fundraiser in our local area. And so when I do that one, I try to make sure that it's really, really, really kid friendly, but I still want to make it all historically accurate things. I want to make sure that I'm using real recipes, but because I'm also looking for things that are approachable for children, I don't tend to pick a period and a date and a particular cookbook. I tend to get a little mismatchy. So I do a little of this and a little of that. But the point of it is to make sure that the kids are finding something that they like. And as a result, what I tend to do is I try to do things that are easily identifiable, that they're comfortable with, and then I'll add a couple of extra little things that maybe not. And I also I serve 6 or 7 dishes at once, remove those 6 or 7 more. So with one of those, I decided I wanted to do a rosy pudding because I thought it would be fun, but I assumed that, the kids aren't going to want this. They're going to think it's perfumey. They're not going to want to eat it. So I'll just make a little. Bad choice. I made a little, and there was some fights for it to the point where I had one of my friend's daughters once found an extra bag of it and it was in the freezer. She was literally eating it out of the bag with a spoon. So these are approachable. They're tasty. They're yummy. So some of my favorites. There's a syrup of julep in the Andalusian cookbook that is basically rosewater sugar, and you make a syrup out of it. And that one's awesome over like shaved ice. I really like that a lot. Marzipan. I love making marzipan. I like making marchpanes. I like almond a great deal, and almond and rosewater make me happy. I like to build with it. I like to eat it. I like to bake it. So I use a lot of rosewater and marzipan. Rosewater lemonade, I like that one a lot too. It's not as historical, although you'll see it listed as like Leonardo da Vinci's drink or whatever, because you'll find whatever it is on the internet. But I just do regular lemonade and I add a splash or two of the rosewater. And that actually, I find that's really, for people that don't drink, they appreciate the fact that you went to the bother of making them something cool. There's also tons of modern cocktails that use rosewater, and those are also very tasty. So you can look some of those up. You can put it in cast sugar plate. That's not someplace you really eat it as much, but it's nice to have and to not have, to just have it hanging around so that you know that you're safe and secure and have it. Dish of snow, rose pudding. I'm a dessert girl. I have done it in some of the chicken dishes, and it's good there as well. There's one that has like chicken and grapes and rosewater that I quite like, and I didn't think I was going to, but I like it quite a bit. So you can do all kinds of things with it. Just keep an eye. Go do a search for rosewater, and you will find it. It's in everything. All right. So I think that's it with that. And we are at like 7:34. So I'm gonna go check on here and see how we're doing. Okay, so I have some melting with my ice. If I want to, I can take a ladle and kind of pull some of that off. I can put new ice on there. Okay. So what I have here is, what's happened is the water and the roses in my pot have precipitated a steam up into up to the top of my lid. Then they've been cooled by the ice, and basically we get rained back down into the bowl. And here's my rosewater. Honestly, it's as simple as that. And it smells gorgeous, and I wish you could smell it. Then what I want to do with this is I'm going to let it cool a little bit. It's not too hot, but I'll let it cool. And then what I'll do is pour it into a bottle. Since, like I said, I have a lot, I will probably be using something a little bit larger, cap, or you could use like a small mason jar. Whatever you had around. There are beautiful decorative ones, decorative things at your hobby store. Michael's has some really nice ones, so any of those things work just great. And you can bottle them up, package them, give them to friends, hoard it all and save it in your freezer and use it for your own cooking, whatever you want to do. Okay, are there any questions?
I have a question.
Yeah.
If we don't have a space for any garden at our house, I would need to get dried leaves. Where could I buy dried rose petals like that?
Mountain Rose Herbs is my recommendation. There are several other places, but they sell organics and they're intended for culinary use.
Excellent, thank you.
So I have a question.
Sure.
I don't know if it came up earlier. I was a little bit late, but my question is there a certain length of time that you can go that you'll kind of get your most out of your roses, or like how much water or how much time through the distillation process until like you aren't likely to
Give
get
up. Yeah.
good results anymore. Yeah.
I have done it anywhere from like 20 minutes to 2 hours.
Mhm.
If I want to hang out and keep changing my ice, and if I've the 20 minutes is normally good, or just a little bit
Okay.
more than that, depending on how
Mhm.
long you want to wait or what your level is. But if you're not getting a good amount, because honestly, I got quite a bit, and I was pretty happy about that.
Okay.
What happens is you'll end up boiling things dry. You don't want to do that. And so if
Yeah.
you add more water,
Okay.
what tends to happen is you dilute your roses. So 20 to 40 minutes,
Mhm.
but you can go as long as 2 hours is really what I would say.
Okay.
And then try some more.
Sounds good.
Any other things I can add? Like I said, I wasn't sure how long this was going to take. It took a lot less time than I thought it would.
All good.
But yeah, I just, took my roses, pulled off my petals, threw away my stem, and that was the whole prep. I didn't like when you're gonna do like, candying or whatever, you're gonna remove the white because it's bitter when you eat it. It's not an issue for this. So yeah, this has very little prep. Just pretend you're shelling peas, sit down there with your bowl.
What do you bottle yours in?
It's on a small scale with 2 or 3, with a smaller amount in a saucepan, and you would still get some. And since a lot of recipes don't require a huge amount, that's not bad. Especially since if you're doing it with dried or whatever, you don't need to make a huge amount because it doesn't last that long anyway. So you may as well make what you need when you need it if you're doing it that way. So that's another option is, like in my case, I probably will be drying some of my petals because I like to make potpourri out of them. I like to add them to salt scrubs and things like that. But also that way I have them as an option later on. So, because again, it only lasts about 3 months or so, shelf stable, and you can add a little bit of time to it, but it doesn't last forever.
So could you put that back on and get some more out of it, or are they spent after a certain time?
I could. I'm actually, let's see. So let me show you what I've got going here. I have a little bit of water. It's starting to darken out, as you can kind of see there, my mess. My roses have gotten, shriveled. They've lost a huge amount of their color. There's still some smell there. I still have some smell. I could let it go for a little longer, but I wouldn't let it go too much longer, especially because I didn't put a whole lot of petals in. But I mean, we're starting to see, like, if we remember how dark those roses were, they're starting to get pretty light, which means most everything that's in them has come out. So what I would probably do, I would probably take out most of those, bring them out, throw out the pulp, put some new ones in. That'll, some of the water is still going to be in there that has come out of the rose petals, and it'll still precipitate as I'm adding further batches. So I will have some mixing as that goes along. Any other questions?
What do you use to store it in once you've made it?
Like I said, these are some options. I normally have prettier bottles, but I don't have any hanging around right now. So you could put it in, just your general mason jar, because mason jar. You could do it small bottle with the stopper. This is a large bottle with stopper, but I don't have a small one in the house right now, so something like that. You just need to be able to seal it. Because if you don't seal it, what'll happen is your smell will evaporate, obviously, because it's a volatile smell. So you want to be able to seal it well, whatever that is.
Trax, it was asked in chat if the color of the roses affects this the rose water, like if
The
different
finished
colors
product,
get better.
no, it doesn't. If you decide to use, like I have in some cases used that, the you know, what's left in there, it doesn't have as much flavor, it doesn't have as much smell, but I've used it. So if you do it that way, it does affect the smell. I mean, it does affect the color. But this is my rose water that I just made. It's clear. The color of my roses does not affect that. You just want something that smells nice. So yeah, you could use white roses. I've done that. You can use yellow roses. Yellow roses, once you boil them, are not at all attractive, but you still get a pretty smell. So no, the smell of, the color of your roses does not matter. It's what they smell like that makes the difference. So if you have a rose that doesn't smell, you probably don't want to try it. You want something that has a nice fragrance. And that's one of those things too, is like I said, like when talking about how like meads work, you are gonna get, if your roses smell it one way, you're gonna get a different flavor than a rose that smells a different way. So you want something pleasant. And you can try different things. Because I've done that. Like I said, I've tried yellow ones before. I've done these, my little pink ones out there. I've mixed some of the pink ones in. I don't like it as well. Because while this has some smell, it's not as good, which is why I stick with my giant plant with itty bitty roses. I mean, teeny tiny little roses, but they have an amazing smell. They are an heirloom and they're fabulous. And again, I lucked out in that I don't have to do anything to my roses except for ignore them. Hack them back occasionally. They've got mint covering their toes, and that whole side of my yard is just, we ignore it and it takes care of itself. And I lucked out. So. Any other questions? All right. Well, thanks guys. I appreciate you hanging out. Super glad you were here, because I swear this turned out better than I've had it turn out in quite a while. I didn't do last year because I had some eye issues, so I'm excited to have some rosewater again this year. Appreciate it, and I will be posting this video. Like I said, there's not a lot of deep, dark technique issues. It's a simple one, which is awesome for those of us that just cross our fingers and hope. This one's great for that. All right.
Thanks, Prax.
All right, thanks guys. I'm gonna end this, and if anyone needs to get a hold of me, just go ahead and ping me or post in the event, and I'm happy to answer any other questions. Have a good night, guys.